Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are going on a bit of a journey, a deeply human one, into a framework known as future design. Listen, if you have ever felt completely drained by the modern grind, constantly moving, constantly reacting to things, but feeling like you're never actually arriving anywhere meaningful, well, you are definitely not alone. This framework we're going to cover is specifically built to pull us out of that exhausting cycle of modern burnout and elevate us into a space of long-term mastery. We're going to look really closely at how we can fundamentally rewire our approach to our purpose, to our ambitions, and honestly, most importantly, to the daily systems we rely on to actually get there.
So I want you to ask yourself, are you running on a treadmill or are you actually building a path? To make this feel real, let me paint a cinematic picture for you. Imagine a biotech researcher. Let's call her Maya. It's 2:15 in the morning. The city outside her window is totally dead and quiet. But inside, the only light is this harsh blue glow from her dual monitor setup, casting massive shadows against the wall. And she's just sitting there, practically frozen. Staring back at her is this chaotic grid of complex spreadsheets, half-finished grant proposals, and, get this, a terrifying 40 open browser tabs. Her coffee went cold literally hours ago. Her ambition is sky high. She genuinely wants to cure diseases. But in this exact moment, she's completely paralyzed by what we call modern cognitive friction. She's trapped by the relentless pressure of short-term metrics and this suffocating feeling that she is already behind on everything. It's a visceral, highly realistic picture of what so many of us experience every single day, really, when we confuse frantic movement with actual progress.
So, to shift from that frantic ambition to grounded legacy building, we have a structured roadmap. First, the anatomy of drift. Second, the architecture of intention. Third, the 5 pillars of future design. And finally, building a lasting legacy. Let's dive in.
Part 1. The anatomy of drift.
We're essentially living in two very different worlds right now, and we have to choose which one we want to build our lives in. First up, we've got the sprint era. This is exactly where Maya's living. It's entirely defined by short-term ambition, the desperate need for rapid metrics, constant push notifications, and, inevitable crashing burnout. It's that high-speed urban life where everything feels like a fast-forwarded blur, and success is basically measured by what you managed to pull off by 5 p.m. today. Now, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have the architects of tomorrow. This mindset is perfectly embodied by people like Dr. Arlo Vane, a deeply focused astrophysicist whose work requires decades of patient observation. His entire worldview is built on long-term purpose, deep mastery, and creating generational systems. For him, it's not about what you can squeeze out by Friday, it's about what you're painstakingly building for the next century, brick by slow brick.
Now, to actually move past the sprint era and become an architect of tomorrow, we have to defeat a silent, invisible enemy. We call it cognitive friction. And this is the immense mental resistance and profound exhaustion caused by constant task switching and misaligned daily actions. Think about it. Every single time you switch from drafting a crucial report to checking a buzzing phone, your brain expends massive amounts of metabolic energy just to reorient itself. When you have 40 tabs open, both literally on your computer and, metaphorically in your head, and your daily actions don't seamlessly align with your deepest values, your brain literally grinds to a halt. It creates this suffocating drag on your potential. So where does this friction show up in your own daily systems? What are the invisible speed bumps you're hitting every single day? Identifying that friction is absolutely the first vital step before we can even begin to design a better future.
Moving on to Part 2, the architecture of intention.
Okay, we're going to fundamentally change the way you think about your goals right now, because this framework flips our usual goal setting completely upside down. Usually, what do? We obsess over outcomes. We fixate entirely on what we want to get, a promotion, a certain revenue target, maybe a published book. But that outcome obsession breeds massive anxiety, because, let's face it, the final result is ultimately out of our direct control. True future design, however, requires us to start at the very center of ourselves, identity. Who do you want to become? From that deeply rooted identity, you build outward to your systems, which are simply the actions you take every single day. And the outcomes? Well, those just happen. They become a natural, inevitable byproduct of running the right systems. It is a profound, life-altering shift from outcome-obsessed anxiety to identity-driven mastery. You stop worrying about winning the marathon, and you simply adopt the identity of a runner who trains at 6 a.m. every day.
When you make that inner shift, your entire relationship with failure completely transforms. Your focus shifts entirely to the process. Let's go back to Maya, sitting in the glowing blue light of her lab. Instead of having a complete meltdown over a single failed compound reaction, because she used to be entirely obsessed with the outcome of a perfect trial, she realizes something incredibly powerful. The failure? It's just data. It's not a disaster at all. It's simply a signpost telling her which direction not to go. Because her identity is no longer someone who must succeed today, but rather a masterful, endlessly patient researcher, the anxiety just dissipates. She physically takes a slow, deep breath, clears the ruined tray from the bench, washes the glass, and calmly starts fresh. She is grounded in the system, totally immune to the turbulence of the immediate result.
Which brings us to part 3, the 5 pillars of future design.
To actually escape the drift, we rely on a practical 5-part blueprint. Vision clarity, systematic decoupling, the friction audit, the resilience protocol, and legacy alignment. And let me be clear, these are not abstract, fluffy concepts. They are heavy-duty tools designed for action. Let's look closely at how a few of these work in the real world to build an unshakable, sustainable trajectory for your life and work.
I want to drill down into Pillar 2 first, because it's an absolute game changer. Systematic decoupling. Sometimes this is called the reverse cascade. You see, when you possess a massive, multi-generational vision, looking at it directly can actually be terrifying. The sheer scale of it creates paralysis. How on earth do you cure a disease or write a massive historical epic? Well, you don't. That's the secret. The reverse cascade is the rigorous process of breaking that intimidating vision down into decoupled, hyper-manageable daily actions. You sever your simple daily tasks from the overwhelming, crushing pressure of that final goal. You completely stop looking at the giant cathedral you want to build. Instead, you stare only at the mortar and the single brick in your hand right now. And you focus exclusively on laying that one single brick today perfectly.
In practice, this takes a very physical form when we look at Pillar 3, the friction audit. Take a guy named Samir, a recent grad who is just utterly paralyzed by option overload and endless digital noise. He doesn't just think about reducing friction, he physically acts on it. He actively eliminates his friction by placing his smartphone into a timed, physical lockbox in another room. He completely removes the choice to be distracted. Then he simply places a glass of water on his desk to stay hydrated. Boom! He has engineered his environment for pure focus. Or consider Pillar 4, the resilience protocol. Think of a high-performance athlete or maybe a brilliant structural engineer. When they face a setback, a missed cue on the track, a broken circuit board, a slip step on wet asphalt, they don't spiral into self-doubt. No way. They execute an immediate physical reset of their posture. They literally square their shoulders, take a prescribed breath, drop the heavy emotional baggage of the mistake instantly, and lock right back into the system. It functions as a biological reset button.
And finally, part 4, building a lasting legacy. This brings us to the absolute longest view. Legacy alignment is about completely shifting your perspective away from today's microscopic emergencies, the endless emails and the urgent trivialities, and focusing deeply on tomorrow's foundations. Imagine a vivid, incredibly cinematic scene for a second. Dr. Arlo Vane and Samir are standing together on the freezing metal balcony of a high-altitude mountain observatory at midnight. The air is thin and biting. Above them is this breathtaking, impossibly dense carpet of stars, ancient galaxies, and glowing nebulae stretching out into absolute infinity. When you stand there and look at the universe with that kind of incredible scale, the frantic, panicked anxiety of the sprint era, it just fades into nothingness. You realize your current stress is just a tiny blip. You start planting seeds for the future, dedicating yourself to a macro, multi-generational project that you yourself might never actually see completed. You stop being a runner on a treadmill, and you become a true architect of tomorrow.
We are left with this incredibly powerful, timeless proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And honestly, it truly does not matter how long you have spent stuck in the chaotic drift of the sprint era. It doesn't matter how many tabs you currently have open on your mental browser, or how many years you feel you might have wasted running on the wrong treadmill. The time to initiate your reverse cascade, to physically lock away the digital distractions, and to start laying the heavy bricks of your foundation is right this very second. The past is gone, but the architecture of tomorrow begins today. So I want to leave you with this final provocative challenge. What is one single system you can build today that your future self will look back and thank you for in 20 years? Seriously, don't just think about it passively as this explainer ends. Actually grab a pen and write it down on a piece of paper. Step firmly out of the drift, embrace the architecture of intention, and take structured, unapologetic action today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.